Have you ever thought about life and death as a camping trip? Hey friends, it's Pastor Mike from Fellowship Church. Always enjoy connecting with you midweek. I hope you're enjoying this fall weather, and I hope you know how much we love you and pray for you. That question for you again, have you ever thought about life and death as a camping trip? Now, we're spending a couple of weeks with these midweek messages talking about death and a Christian understanding of death, which can be very different than a contemporary understanding of death. And I'd like to explain today's thought by talking about a camping trip. Now, when my wife and I were first married in our early years of being a married couple, and our son Brian was part of our family as well, he was just a toddler, maybe a couple years old, we decided that we would kind of unite our family around a wonderful family tradition called camping. Both my wife and I had done some camping as we were raised. We went out and bought ourselves a tent. It wasn't much of a tent. We didn't have much money, but we bought ourselves a tent. And then, of course, when you buy a tent, you've got to buy a cooler, and you got to buy a camp stove, and you got to buy a portable grill. I mean, all this stuff starts to add up after a while. And if you're going to go camping with a toddler, you need 10 pounds of equipment for every pound of the toddler. So we had my pickup truck plus a small trailer we towed behind the pickup truck, and we went off camping, Hoffmaster State Park, and we set up that campsite. Boy, we thought we were going to have a great weekend together. And then it started to rain. In fact, I think the monsoon union got together in advance and decided to send out their best monsoon for the Van Campen's weekend camping trip. It rained so hard that night that the water was coming up from the floor and from above. The next morning we got up, threw that tent in the dumpster, and I've never camped in a tent since then. But I'll tell you something I learned about camping. Oh, by the way, don't bother to invite me camping in your tent. But I learned something about kind of life and death from camping in a tent. And that is that tents are really awesome ways to get out and enjoy the outdoors. And tents are portable. You can move from place to place. You can get them in places you could never get a trailer. There certainly are advantages to a tent, but tents are temporary. They may be portable, but they were never intended to be permanent. Okay, Pastor Mike, that's all nice. Where are we going with this? 2 Corinthians chapter 5 tells us that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in the heavens, not built by human hands. Isn't it interesting that in God's Word, the Bible, He compares life on earth to a camping trip? Really? It says that this body that we're living in, at least from heaven's perspective, is an earthly tent, which means, friends, that this body that you inhabit, this life that you live, all the things that you think are so important from heaven's perspective, it was all temporary from the very beginning. The neat thing about life in this physical body and the life that we enjoy is that it's portable. We can go places, we can do things. There certainly is some advantages to all of that. But God says when it comes to longevity, your body was a tent from day number one. It certainly has its advantages, but from the very beginning, it was never intended to be your forever life. God puts a time mark on these lives, and God says, right now, you're living in a tent. But thank God He has a solution for that as well. That passage, we know the earthly tent we live in will someday be destroyed, but we have a building from God, an eternal house in the heavens, not built by human hands. God says someday you won't be living in that tent anymore. Another neat thought is that, by the way, hospitals, they're just places where we go to repair the tents, right? But God says someday you won't be repairing that tent anymore. Someday that tent will no longer fulfill your needs, and I have an eternal house in the heavens, built it for myself, just for you, that you can live in for eternity. So friends, this is a different way to think of death. What if you and I thought of death as the fact that we're no longer going to live in the tent? Instead, we're going to be dwelling in the eternal house in the heavens that is permanent forever and ever, and one day we'll be joined by all those who love Jesus as well. That's eternal. This is temporary. The portable might be nice, and certainly life on earth certainly can be an adventure, camping trip, but God says it was never intended to be eternal. That's eternal. And friends, that gets me thinking when I think of death. So someday we release this tent, so we can grasp a hold of what God has prepared for us, which is eternal. He built it Himself for us. Right now, you're just camping, but someday the camping trip will come to an end. And that's when life really begins. Friends, I hope that speaks to you. It's certainly part of my mindset on a regular basis whenever I'm performing funerals and so on. I hope it gives some comfort to you as well. Hope you have a wonderful week. Know that we love you and pray for you. Hope you're enjoying your camping trip and glad that God has prepared something better for us as well. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.